I want you to imagine something. You've worked your whole life to build a safe home, a good home, the kind of home where your daughter feels protected, loved, and seen. Now imagine watching that safety get stripped away, piece by piece, by people who are supposed to be family. And imagine the one person who's supposed to stand beside you. She's the one holding the knife. My name doesn't matter, but my daughter's name is Zoe, and this is the story of the lock on her door, and everything it cost us. Don't go anywhere, because I promise you, the part that broke me, it hasn't happened yet. Let me take you back about 10 months. My brother-in-law, I'll call him Sammy, lost his house, divorce, financial collapse, the whole avalanche. One minute he's got a life, the next, he's got 2 daughters and nowhere to go. His name is Sammy and his twin daughters are Olivia and Sloane. They're 18, and yes, twins. 2 of them. Remember that detail. It matters later. Now, Sammy's family, my wife's family, was given the opportunity to help. Every single one of them passed. Parents? No room. Siblings? Not convenient. Cousins? Didn't even return the calls. But my wife, her name is Claire in this story, because I'm protecting her even now, even after everything. Claire couldn't turn her brother away, and honestly, I didn't want her to, because that's not who I am. I said yes. I said yes to Sammy moving in. I said yes even knowing our house isn't enormous. I said yes even knowing we have a teenage daughter of our own, Zoe, 16, who had finally started to feel like our home was her home. Zoe is quiet. She's an introvert. She saves up her babysitting money for makeup she researches for weeks before buying. She redecorates her room every season just to feel in control of something. Her bedroom isn't just a room. It's the one place in the world that's entirely, completely hers. I should have thought more about that before I said yes, but I didn't, because family is supposed to mean something. Pause. It took Sammy about 6 weeks to find his footing. He got a part-time job, started sleeping on a regular schedule, stopped sitting in the dark watching TV at 2 a.m. His daughters moved in 2 months after him. That's when things started to unravel. The first time it happened, I almost missed it. Zoe came downstairs looking for her phone charger. She was certain she'd left it on her desk. Claire and I helped her look. We found it in Sloane's room, plugged into Sloane's wall, charging Sloane's phone. Sloane shrugged, said she needed it, and Zoe's door was open. Zoe's door being open was apparently all the invitation that was needed. We let it go. Chargers are chargers. Sloane returned it. We reminded her to ask first. Everyone nodded. Everything seemed fine. It was not fine. 2 weeks later, Zoe's school laptop disappeared for 3 days. 3 days. She missed 2 assignments. I was furious. We turned the whole house upside down before Olivia mentioned, casually, the way you'd mention the weather, that she'd borrowed it to watch Netflix because her tablet was charging. She hadn't asked. She'd just walked into Zoe's room, taken the laptop off the desk, and carried it to her own room like it was a library. Zoe had said nothing because she didn't want to cause problems. Read that again. My 16-year-old daughter had been silently suffering, afraid to speak up in her own home, because she didn't want to seem difficult. I sat Sammy down. I sat Claire down. I explained, calmly, that this needed to stop. Zoe's things were Zoe's things. Her room was her space. Walking in and taking things without permission wasn't borrowing. It was taking. Sammy waved me off. Girls share. That's what girls do. Olivia and Sloane have always shared everything. This is normal. Claire agreed. They're just trying to connect with her. I remember sitting there thinking, is this a different language? Are we having the same conversation? I let it go. Again. Because family is supposed to mean something. Long pause. Music fades to near silence. I want to tell you exactly how patient I was. I want you to understand that I am not a man who reacts impulsively. I gave this situation months of quiet requests, gentle reminders. Could you please ask Zoe first? Let's make sure we knock. Boundaries are important. Nothing changed. Clothes started disappearing from Zoe's closet. A jacket, a scarf she'd gotten for her birthday, earrings from a set her grandmother gave her. Each time, I was just borrowing it. Each time. No asking beforehand. Each time, Zoe found out because the thing was simply gone. She started keeping her door shut. They opened it anyway. She started keeping her door closed with a chair propped against it. They thought this was funny, a quirk, a game. And through all of it, every time I raised it, to Sammy, to Claire, the answer was the same. Girls share. It's normal. You're overreacting. They're trying to bond. I want to be very precise about when I stopped believing that. Zoe had been saving for 6 weeks. She mowed 2 neighbors' lawns every Saturday. She babysat the family down the street 3 times. She didn't buy anything for herself for a month and a half. No snacks. No online purchases. Nothing. She was saving for a MAC makeup kit, One of the ones that looks like an artist's paint set, with the little pans of eyeshadow arranged in a grid. I didn't know anything about makeup, but I knew this was significant because she'd shown it to me on her phone maybe a dozen times. Dad, look at how the colors are organized. It's like actual art. $60. That was the goal. She hit it in 6 weeks. I drove her to the mall myself. Watched her walk up to the counter like she owned the place. Watched her hand over her own money, her own earned money, and carry that box out like it was a trophy. She put it on her desk when she got home. She said she wasn't even going to open it until the weekend when she had time to really sit with it. 2 days later, I heard her crying. Not sniffling, not quiet upset, sobbing. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and helpless. I found her sitting on her bed holding the kit. The packaging was open. Inside, the neat, organized pans were ruined. Colors smeared together. Browns dragged into pinks. The whole careful arrangement destroyed by someone who had no idea and no concern for what they were doing. Sloan had taken it, used it carelessly, mixed the shades together, and put it back on Zoe's desk when she was done. No note, no apology, just the ruined thing, left where Zoe would find it. Pause. 5 full seconds of silence. I'm going to tell you something I've never said out loud. In that moment, looking at my daughter crying over $60 worth of destroyed property that she had earned, I made a decision, and I made it completely calmly. No rage, no trembling, just clarity. I got in my car. I drove to the hardware store. I bought a lock. I installed it myself. Took about 20 minutes. Zoe watched me do it. She didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "Dad, is this going to make things worse?" I said, "It's going to make things right. That's different." She nodded. She tried the key twice. She smiled, small, private, and put the key in her pocket. That night, Sammy noticed. "I'll give him this." He didn't yell immediately. He came to me first. He stood in the hallway looking at that lock like it had personally insulted him, and then he turned to me with this expression, half offended, half baffled, and he said, "What is this?" I told him exactly what it was and exactly why it was there. He said his daughters weren't thieves. I didn't argue with the word. I said, "Whether we call it theft or borrowing, Zoe's property keeps ending up in other people's hands without her permission. A $60 makeup kit she saved for 6 weeks is now ruined. This lock stays until that changes." He said, "Zoe could get a $15 kit from Walmart. She shouldn't even be buying that expensive adult makeup. That's the real problem here. Someone needs to address that defect in her personality. I want you to hold that word, defect." He called my daughter's interest in makeup, her careful, earned, joyful little hobby, a defect in her personality. I looked at him for a long moment, and then I said, very quietly, "This conversation is over," and I walked away, because if I had said anything else in that moment, it would not have been something I could take back. I need to tell you about Claire, because this isn't a story about a villain. Claire is not a villain. She is a woman who loves her brother fiercely, who has spent her whole life being the family member who shows up, and who, I think, genuinely could not see what was happening because seeing it would have required her to choose. And choosing is the hardest thing. When Claire came to me about the lock, she wasn't angry at first. She was embarrassed. "The girls saw it," she said. "They're upset. They feel like they're being accused of something." I said, "They did something." She said, "They're kids. They made mistakes." "You're treating this like a criminal investigation." I said, "I'm treating this like my daughter's home should be her home." She said, "They're supposed to be treating each other like sisters." I said, "Sisters don't destroy each other's things." She said, "The lock needs to come off." And that's where I drew the line. I told her, "This lock does not come off until Sammy and his daughters are out of our house." I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like an ultimatum. But I want you to understand, it wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. The lock existed because of a specific problem. The problem would resolve when the source of the problem was gone. That's not cruelty. That's logic. Claire did not see it as logic. She said I was implying we were kicking them out. I said I wasn't implying anything. I was describing reality. She said her family would hate me. And that's when I said the thing that I have replayed 100 times since. Not because I regret it, but because of what it cost. I said, "Your family already had their chance. They all said no." I said yes. If anyone in your family wants to be upset about this situation, they should start by looking in a mirror. Long pause. The silence that followed that sentence lasted 3 days. 3 days of silence in your own home is a particular kind of war. Sammy stopped making eye contact. His daughters walked past me in hallways like I was furniture. Claire answered my questions in single syllables. Only Zoe talked to me normally, and even that felt complicated, like I was protecting her from one storm by walking us both into another. She said to me on day 2, "Dad, I don't want everyone to be fighting because of me." I said, This isn't because of you. This is because of how you were treated, she said. But I feel like it's my fault. I want you to sit with that. A 16-year-old girl, whose property had been repeatedly taken and destroyed, was apologizing for the consequences of other people's actions. She had internalized the blame so completely that she genuinely believed the lock on her door, the protection I had given her, was something she needed to answer for. That's what months of your overreacting does to a kid. I didn't say any of that to her then. I just said, you did nothing wrong. I want you to hear me say that clearly. You did nothing wrong. She nodded and went back to her room. I heard her lock it from the inside. Pause. On day 4, Claire tried a different approach. She came to me calm, measured, the version of herself she uses in difficult conversations. She sat down across from me and she said, I know you feel like you're protecting Zoe. I know that. But you're destroying the peace in this house. And you're making my brother feel like a criminal in a home that's supposed to be a refuge for him. I said, what about Zoe's peace? Who's protecting that? She said, Zoe is fine. I said, Zoe moved her valuables out of the house because she didn't feel safe. That's not fine. She said, you're catastrophizing. And I thought, I bought a lock. I bought a single lock for my daughter's door. In what world is a lock catastrophizing? But I didn't say that. I said, the lock stays. She left the room. That night, I heard her on the phone with her mother. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the rhythm, the low, urgent tone of someone building a case against someone else, filing a report to headquarters. The next morning, Claire's mother called me directly. Part 7. The call. 1:40. Music. Phone ringing. Then silence. I'll be honest, I almost didn't answer, but I picked up because I'm not someone who hides. Claire's mother, I'll call her Diane, is a woman who has perfected the art of sounding reasonable while saying unreasonable things. She has a voice like warm tea. Everything she says sounds like a favor. She said, sweetheart, I hear there's been some tension. Tension. That was the word she used. Like a string pulled too tight. Nothing more. I said, that's one way to put it. She said, Sammy is going through the hardest time of his life. He needs to know that the people around him are rooting for him, not building walls. I said, I installed a lock, not a wall. There's a difference. She said, you're making his daughters feel like outsiders. I said, they are outsiders. With respect, Diane, they are guests in my home. I didn't say that unkindly, but I did say it. And guests don't walk into other people's rooms and take their things. She said, they're young. They make mistakes. I said, at 18. We call those choices, not mistakes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I will never forget. She said, you knew what you were signing up for when you said yes. I said, I signed up to let Sammy stay while he got back on his feet. I did not sign up to let his daughters treat my daughter's room like a free store. Another silence. Then, you're going to regret pushing this family away. I said, Diane, with all due respect, this family already pushed itself away when no one else would take Sammy in. I'm the one who said yes. I'm the one who's still saying yes, every day, while 3 people in my house treat me and my daughter like the problem. So I'm going to need you to reconsider who exactly is pushing who. She said she'd pray for me, and she hung up. Pause. Music swells slightly. That was day 5. Day 6 is when things got complicated. I need to slow down here, because I've been telling you this story in a certain way, as a conflict between adults, over a teenager's room, over property, over respect, and all of that is true. But on day 6, Zoe came to me after school and she closed the kitchen door behind her and she put her phone on the table between us. On the screen was a screenshot of a group chat. I won't tell you everything that was in it. Some of it isn't mine to share, but I will tell you this. Olivia and Sloan had a group chat, with friends back in their old school, kids I'd never met, and they had been, for weeks, describing our home, describing Zoe, using words I will not repeat here, calling the lock psycho behavior, calling me a name I won't repeat, speculating about why Zoe was like that, mocking the makeup kit, calling it sad. Zoe had found it because one of those friends, a stranger to her, had screenshotted and sent it to a mutual acquaintance, who sent it to Zoe. The way Zoe looked at me across that table, I've been a father for 16 years and I have never, not once, seen that expression on her face before. It was the look of someone who has discovered that they are smaller in another person's mind than they ever imagined. She said, Dad, I want them to leave. And that was the first time she'd asked. I sat her down. I put the phone in front of her, and I watched her read it. She was silent for a long time. Then she said, kids say stupid things in private chats. I said, Claire. She said, it's not directed at Zoe. She wasn't supposed to see it. I said, that's not, Claire. That's not the point. The point is that these girls are living in our house, eating our food, sleeping under our roof, and they are mocking your daughter in group chats with strangers. She said, my nieces. I said, my daughter. Pause. And there it was, the thing that had always been underneath this, the fault line running through the middle of our house, invisible until the weight got too heavy. Her brother, her nieces, my daughter. Whose side do you stand on when love divides itself down the middle of your marriage? Claire looked at the phone for a long time. Then she pushed it back across the table to me, and she said, I need some time. She stood up and went into the bedroom, and I heard the door close. Not lock, just close. Music returns. Low. Unresolved. And I sat there in my kitchen, with my daughter's phone in my hand, and the sound of 3 people upstairs moving around in my house, and the silence of a marriage pressing down on me from behind a closed door. The lock on Zoe's room was never about the makeup. It was never about $60, or a charger, or a laptop. It was about a father watching his daughter learn that her home wasn't safe and deciding, no, not while I'm standing here, not while I can do something. And the question that's been keeping me awake, the question I don't have an answer to, is this: was I right? Or did I protect my daughter at the cost of my marriage? And if I did, if that